Hit it. Can you hear me back there? There we go. All right. So this talk is called Hunting Cyber Criminals. Something that this is a brand new talk. I've been putting together some information on different threat actor groups, how I came about them, and just some evidence that we found along the way through part of the normal investigative process. And so, with that, my name is Vinny Troia. I run a company called Nightline Security. Typically, my background in the past has been mostly pen testing. Lately, though, I'd say the past 3 years or so, I've been more on the threat intel and investigation side of things. That's a cover of my new book, Hunting Cyber Criminals, which will be an extension of this talk, much more in-depth stories. Actually, will be out December 1st, so please pick up a copy. And with that, so if I was going to convey just one thing to you through this entire talk, it would be that vanity trumps OPSEC all the time. So you're nodding your head, so you got it. So, this way? Perfect. Okay. So I want to do a little demonstration of exactly what that means, and we'll dig into it a little bit more in a little bit, but just for now, and I know it's super early, and I'm sorry to ask you to do this, but can I have everybody stand up? All right, so I'd like you to pick a number, 1, 2, or 3. Don't say it out loud. And so if you have, sorry, I got to get this ready. All right, if you pick number 1, I'd like you to put your hands out about here. If you pick number 2, give me halfway. And if you pick number 3, go ahead and close your hands. All right, so check this out. All right, you can all sit down. Sorry, I just wanted to post on my Instagram that I got a standing ovation at the last Derbycon. So, all right, so getting started for real then. So this phrase definitely is legit, and we'll get into it in a minute. But before we do that, something I wanted to talk about, I would say whenever I call organizations to disclose something that I found, there are times where I often get a lot of pushback, and that's because of some of the discoveries that I've had in the media. One of the more prominent has been this company called Exactus. So Exactus was this marketing firm that happened to have an open Elasticsearch database. They leaked information on like hundreds of millions of U.S. consumers. I mean, it was a massive database that they leaked. And so typically, in an instance like that, I mean, I don't always go to the media. In this case, we were having a lot of trouble identifying where the data was coming from, which, when you talk about just stumbling across stuff on open buckets, usually it points back to like an Azure or an AWS, and you're never going to find your owner that way. I mean, Amazon's certainly not going to tell you who owns the bucket. So I had been working with a reporter at the time, and we kind of pieced it together, and, the story came out, and when I had contacted Exactus, I told them about it up front. I said, look, this is what's happening. I've already notified the FBI just because of the volume of people that, that were exposed and the amount of time that the data was exposed. And, he seemed okay. He didn't want to make a statement. And then the story came out, and then 2 weeks later, he texted me at like 2 a.m. and told me I ruined his life, which sucked. But, at the end of the day, I mean, he really should have put a firewall in front of his database. It happens. But anyway, so my point here is, I don't do a whole lot of public database disclosures like that, but, the few that have been out, certainly, you get this reputation. And so, to put this in perspective, there was another breach that I came across. Rather, somebody was trying to sell me domain admin credentials to a company. Now, the company never disclosed, even though the the people were actually exfilling the data. And I can't tell you who the major airline is, but you could probably piece it together just by looking at this. So I contacted them, and I said, look, these guys are in your network. They're literally exfilling your data right now. And they're like, no, we don't think so. I'm like, okay. So a couple days later, I got back to him again. I said, look, really, they're in your network. He's like, yeah, we don't really believe you. We think maybe you're lying and this is like a trick. I said, okay. So I asked the guys for a sample. And so they gave me these commands that they were running. Now, obviously, the asterisks have been, they were removed. But I said, look, these are commands that they're running as domain admin in your network. And obviously, these are your group members. And then I didn't hear from them anymore. And so 2-3 days went by, and I was calling him. I'm like, hey, was the information good? Was the guy full of shit? I mean, can you give me something? And nothing. So finally, he calls me back one night, and he's like, look, legal told me I'm not allowed to talk to you anymore. I was like, okay. But the information was good. We got the guys out of the network. But we can't help you. Which really sucks, because the only thing I had asked for going in was some IP addresses, like something that could maybe help me identify who these guys are. They wouldn't even do that, which sucks. But they kicked the guys out, and the guys who were kind of doing this kind of figured out it was me, but not really. But it's one of those annoying lines you kind of have to walk, where do I just say screw it and let this data get exfilled, or do I notify them and have them turn out to be big dicks? But it happens. But so, more often than not, these are the types of scenarios that I deal with. Usually it's somebody who's already grabbed a copy of the data and is looking for has sort of a private market or private kind of sales group going on, or they're in the middle of doing it. I found that the sale of domain admin accounts has just gone through the roof lately. It seems like that's all anybody's selling. But so let's talk about some of the groups that I kind of been running across a lot. So the first group, and we'll only talk about them briefly, is this Mabna group. Now, Mabna is a group of Iranians. They're on the FBI's most wanted list. They're most well known for the Citrix hack. They also did HBO, Komodo, a bunch of others. And the guy who I was in direct communication with, I don't know who he is on this list, but he goes by Joker. And so the thing that I really love about doing this type of threat intel and really kind of digging in and kind of talking to these guys is it doesn't take much to set them off. And you can really pin them against each other, which can be really fun to watch. And so I've got this one guy who's, everybody kind of tries to have these pissing contests and they try to one-up each other and, what they can do. And so when you look at this conversation I had with a guy about Joker, he was telling me, about Citrix. And basically they got the VPN credentials via cookies that were stored on the Citrix server. And then Citrix said that they didn't get hacked for all the products, which is a complete lie. I can't prove or disprove it. Apparently these guys had access internally for years. I don't know. But this is the type of information that if you start poking and prodding comes out very easily, especially when people kind of hate each other. Now it sucks that it's so hard to see on this dark screen, but this is specifically one of Mabna's tools. It's the most simplest thing ever. It's credential stuffing. So you put in a company name. It will look through different data breaches to find email addresses associated with that company. It'll find the web server, and it'll try just brute forcing the 365 login. And that's it. So Joker actually sold me, or tried to sell me, Komodo when it had come out. And so that was good for them because I notified them. But stuff they do is all it is credentials, 365 hacks, stuff like that. So it's really not that sophisticated. But, and this is a little blurry, but this is a screenshot of the folder he was selling. On here, we've got DowJones.com, LexisNexis. I forgot about that one. Splunk. So Splunk isn't as good as it sounds. It was only about 150 accounts. They were just kind of scraped from different places, and they were vetted, and they turned out to be legit. And so this was early 2019. I lost track of them. Interestingly enough, after the whole Citrix thing, so since I know Joker was the guy responsible for it, he kind of disappeared. And usually when people disappear, they like come back every once in a while. Joker like disappeared, so I think maybe they killed him, which is unfortunate. But you know, it is what it is. So another group that I deal with a lot is NSFW. Now, this is a list, what I know about that. So NSFW is 1 to 2 people. And it's mostly 1, but sometimes it's 2. It's weird. But this is all the stuff I know he's done. And so, I mean, he's very busy. The cool thing about NSFW is he loves to talk. And so, I ask him all the time, you know, how did you do this thing, or how did you do this thing? And so here's one. He's a major online retailer. This was really interesting because he doesn't use the same sort of low-level hacks that Mabna does. He's really into it. So in this situation, he had to wait 5 months to hack it. I had a set of keys from their storage AWS account that I got from social engineering somebody from an unused Slack account. Never even would have thought about that. Basically, I got into the dev's Slack account that wasn't being used. I messaged a random sysadmin who was active on a channel and asked him for the keys to the new storage environment. He gave them to me in a text file, then I deleted it after I received it. I mean, never would have thought of trying to go in through Slack, but I guess it works. And, you know, I vetted it with the company, who is now very thankful that we were able to kind of figure this out. They have disclosed, and this turned out to be legit. So it's good. I like more of an interactive, like, threat intel. I guess I'm more of a hands-on kind of person, right? I can't just sit back and observe. I like to kind of be deep in it. And here's another example. Major Las Vegas hotel chain. This one was actually fairly complex. It got to a point where I didn't even understand what was going on. But he identified software developers using LinkedIn. He partially doxed one of them to obtain some Gmail accounts, performed database lookups for password reuse, which always works. Then he got into the guy's GitHub. And by the way, sidetrack, one of his databases that I know he has that he's just using the hell out of right now is CodeChef. Somebody should probably notify them. But so CodeChef's all developers. And all he's doing is he's cracking those password hashes. And he's going into GitHub and he's finding keys. I mean, that's like 90% of what he's doing. So he got into Bob. I changed the names, Bob GitHub, which was a reused password from, you know, Armor Games. And so I guess GitHub has this new algorithm to lock out accounts from new IPs. So we had to add a new public SSH key to the profile. Then we kind of got lucky because there was this weird Okta implementation, and I'm not a big Okta guy, so I didn't really get it. But the company vetted it or validated it, and they were, it was legit. So the good thing is he knows he has skill, and he loves to brag about it. So that's obviously good for me. But you can always kind of keep him talking, and so I find that approach to be much more interesting. And so the thing is, why are they talking? And this is a good question that a lot of people ask me. However, in order to give you that answer, I'm going to kind of take a sidestep. I want to talk about these guys for a second, the Dark Overlord. If you're not familiar with them, in 2016, they came on the scene. They basically began terrorizing and extorting organizations. They had a huge media presence, initially from publicizing hacks on medical facilities, a bunch in St. Louis or Missouri, like Midwest Imaging Center, Farmington, Orthopedic Spine and Clinic, Van Ness Orthopedic. There was a bunch of them. In 2017, they kind of really hit headlines when they hacked Netflix. They were able to get advanced copies of Orange is the New Black. And so I guess they extorted Netflix for like $50,000 to not release it, which is weird because I thought they released it anyway, but maybe Netflix didn't pay them. Let's see, end of 2017, there was a shift in the group that we'll talk about in a little bit. But the group moved from more traditional hacking to more like terror-based attacks. And by terror, I mean they were literally sending like death threats to students, trying to get the schools to pay them money in order to stop sending text messages. They actually closed 30 plus schools. Maybe 15,000 students stayed home for over a week. The thing about the group is they're extremely agitated all the time, or at least the front man is very, very agitated. He loves talking. He's got this huge ego thing, and if you challenge him, he'll push back immediately. He thinks he's the greatest. The really funny thing is, like, they would always post stuff on Twitter, and like if a company didn't like pay the ransom, they would get really pissed on Twitter. It was like really immature. It was weird. Like, hey asshole, why aren't you paying the ransom? Like grow up. So that was that. As far as attack vectors go, they initially did a bunch of RDP-based attacks. They would buy, so their initial compromises they actually got from the Ecstatic server. Ecstatic was an old dark web forum where you could literally buy RDP access to different servers. It was like $5 or $10 per server. And we know this to be a fact because on those systems, Ecstatic is actually nice enough to provide their own client. So you can close the vulnerability but then get back in. And so those were discovered on a bunch of those machines. What I think happened, and this is kind of corroborated by a bunch of the articles as well, one of the medical clinics that they had gained access to had this SRAS medical software. And from there they found it's basically like a developer's account, kind of, but he had we'll call it a dev account. He had access to other medical facilities through the software. So from there, their attacks just ballooned out. They used this as their kind of method. They had they had access to all these other facilities, and then they went on this ransoming rampage. So they were able to identify stored credentials within the clinic's medical software, which then gave them third-party remote access to the majority of all the future medical victims. The companies completely ranged in sizes. It didn't really matter. Although towards the end, one of the guys developed this weird fetish where he would like to go after like plastic surgery clinics and release pre and post-op breast like boob jobs, thinking that like if you're a Hollywood person, like you're going to care if your kids are online. But he would get really, really angry about it. It was actually kind of funny to watch. So I also think towards the end, the value of Bitcoin dropped. They weren't really making a whole lot of money. And so they were really kind of grasping at straws. But yeah, so the majority of their initial victims were all RDP access. It was very unsophisticated, low level. They literally bought the access. And then once they were in, they were able to use this software to kind of tunnel out. When communicating with the group, this is the most impressive thing I think about this group is that everything they did was standardized. So regardless of who you were talking to, which group member, they had call it a script. They had basically everything was standardized against the Queen's English, so it always appeared that you were talking to the same person, even though you can. I mean, obviously there's differences, and you can tell, certain maturity level. But I was looking into this, and there's so for Jabber clients, Pigeon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Pigeon, but Pigeon actually has autocorrect, kind of like an autocorrect script where you could literally put in your own language. So you could just do normal. You could talk the way you talk, and then have it kind of autocorrect for you. It's actually really interesting that they would take the time to do that. But that being said, in 2017, I was kind of alluding to this. They had a public announcement on Twitter that said there was going to be an official change of leadership. Now, I call this kind of TDO1 and TDO2. The leadership change marked the beginning of all the increased hostility and aggressiveness, and basically, again, moving away from more traditional hacking to more aggressive manipulation and, just hostile threats, things like that. So I hate that I have to redact this, but I do. But here's kind of the basic overview of the group. So there's four key people. Cyper, we'll talk about him. He's kind of the guy in the background. He's never really visible. He's mostly well known for running the Kick-Ass forum and the Black Box forum as the name NSA, not to be confused with the NSA on here. Arnie, who's most well known as the group's leader, was actually their fall guy, which we'll talk about. NSA is the guy, the really aggressive kid who is very angry all the time. He does a lot of the hacking, and then Crook is kind of their sales and marketing guy. Here is a list of victims that I could find that were published. I know there's more because I know a lot of people haven't come forward. These are the ones. And also, just to be clear, that's not to say that all of these people have paid a ransom. Just all of these people have at least been contacted or terrorized by this group in some way. Interestingly enough, it was one night, maybe October. It was like midnight on a Friday. He decided to call me. Not like call me on the phone, but he like jabbered me. And so, I don't know if he was drunk. And so we literally talked for like 3.5 hours, and it was the weirdest conversation I've ever had with anybody. A lot of those snippets and conversations will be in my book and my official report, kind of when all the indictments come out. But I wanted to kind of break out this section here. He's really focused on the school closings. I mean, he talks about it all the time. He won't shut up about it. And he also won't shut up about the fact that the CIA and the NSA like keep trying to go after him and they're unsuccessful, and he thinks he's like all that. But so here, it's been publicly reported. Check the Billings Gazette in Montana. Okay. You realize that we closed down 6 different school districts in Montana for 5 business days, 36,000 students. We've all heard about bomb threats, but have you known anyone to close down schools for 5 days? Have you thought about it? Well, no, okay, I haven't. He's so proud of it. I don't know. I mean, okay, you close granted, yes, it's an accomplishment to close a school and get 35,000 kids out of school for 5 days, but congratulations. So I've asked him many times, like, what his most impressive hack is, and he always comes back to this. And sometimes, especially towards the end, I was doing it just to kind of get a rise out of him. But okay, so kind of back to this. Why are they talking to me? So now that we kind of have a general idea of who the TDO players are, I wanted to bring up this situation. Mr. Brian Krebs wrote the most awesomely bashing article about me, calling me a criminal, not too long ago, maybe 5-6 months. Basically, the story was when security researchers disguise themselves as cyber criminals who can tell the difference. Now, frankly, I kind of thought that was the point of disguising myself as a criminal, but it's okay. He was in an uproar about something, I don't know. But basically, he accused me of selling fake data online, which is true. I was selling fake data online. I mean, I was doing it to kind of get in with a cyber and those groups of people, but it is what it is. I mean, he didn't appreciate the fact that his name was in the sample, even though all the information was stripped out of it. And it is what it is. But anyway, so he wrote this article, and it kind of sent this ripple through the Kick-Ass forum. And so if you're not familiar with Kick-Ass, Kick-Ass was, it no longer is, a dark web hacker forum. It was one of the few remaining. There aren't many left that are really used anymore. That being said, it it kind of had this little ripple effect. And so he even replied here at the bottom. He goes, "You told me that you were kicked from Kick-Ass for insulting TDO," which was kind of true. So, what did he burn? Well, the thing is, what you may not realize is that it pissed everybody in the forum off once they knew I was there. And so we've got this guy, Def Row, who's, yes, this is my real social security number, date of birth, and everything else. And, he's trying to start this whole campaign against me. And then the forum admin, NSA, who is Cyber, decides to put a bounty on my website, which was annoying. But so he had this contest now of who can hack Vinny Troia's website. So my motto is go big or go home. You know who can hack Vinny Troia's website? I can. So using one of my other aliases, I hacked my own website. Thank you. So this was my website. This was the About Me page. I had this up. I was using the name Argon at the time. And so here's the thing. Brian's article was a pain in the ass, but I had this really good opportunity now because I was already trying to get into Cyber's little, exclusive hacking group, and now, I did this major hack that he was so impressed with. But of course, he was going to want to know more, right? So, yeah, sorry. You know what? Let me just pull this. Thanks. Of course, he's going to want to know more. So this, I thought, was a great opportunity to set a trap and kind of learn some information. So what I did was, I set up a fake PHP MyAdmin panel, picked an obscure folder, easily discoverable with Dirbuster. I, gave it kind of some plausibility of how I found it. It was an old, outdated version that I knew had some vulnerabilities, but I took an old one of my passwords that I found in another data breach, and I set that as the password. And then I set up some strict firewall rules to block any Tor, VPN, or known bad IP addresses. So once they started connecting, I'd actually get a pretty clear view of where they were coming from. And I let it fly. I got 5 solid hits out of that. That's it. I got 5 hits. It was great. They were all good. A lot of them came from Amazon accounts, which I couldn't do anything with, but I'm sure law enforcement figured some stuff out with that. But Amazon won't. Obviously, they won't tell me who owns the IPs. But those were. They fell for it. It was great, and I got into his little club, and everything was peachy. So access was granted, sort of. The reality is it was a little more convoluted than that, but for the most part, that's kind of how it went. But so, I was listening to, Strand talk here yesterday about kind of setting up these traps of, what will these attackers run on? And this was a perfect situation where, there's no way they weren't going to try to log into that panel. And I know they logged in because they were actually posting copies of hashes from within the PHP MyAdmin page, trying to get them to, looking for people to crack them. So I know who's in the page specifically, and now I have a pretty good idea of where he is in Belarus. So it worked out. So like I said, go big or go home. I don't think most people would have gone to those lengths, but all great. So moving on then, where to start? Assuming we're kind of starting at the beginning of this thing. When TDO first came out, they were all over the media for their healthcare hacking. And okay, so to speed this along, the 2 big players that we saw, this guy Arnie, who was posting stuff on Hell. He was the guy who initially posted access to the RDP, access to the medical groups and all the stuff he was selling. And then we had this other guy, Crook, who was also posting all of the sales information. Most notably, he had this Jabber account that he always used, Crook at Swiss Jabber. He would post on a lot of the Russian forums, and he was the sales guy. And it was very obvious. So the thing about Crook is he was incredibly smart because he, as a person, will only reuse handles that other people are using. And I'll show you why that's significant here in a minute. But before we get into Crook, I actually want to get into Arnie. Because Arnie, for a long time, was like the biggest mystery ever. Everybody was trying to figure out who Arnie was. And when it finally dawned on me after I read the official indictments, I was smacking myself. But so in 2016, 2017, this wonderful man, Nathan Wyatt, was arrested for hacking Pippa Middleton's iPhone account and some other stuff. He goes by the name Crafty Cockney. He was arrested in 2016, suspicion of computer misuse, act offenses for sale of pictures from Pippa Middleton's iPhone. Following a search of his devices, the London police found malware that he was using to gain access to different law firms that were also associated specifically with TDO. The funny thing about him is that he set up bank accounts in his personal name and his girlfriend's name to extract funds received from TDO's extortions. His real name and his girlfriend's real name. So they really found a winner with him. So that's why I say he's their fall guy. He was Arnie. He was the front guy. He was the one you always spoke with. His aliases: Crafty Cockney, Mask, Jason Voorhees, Gingivitis, Loot 5, Dark Money Man. All right. Currently, Mr. Arnie is fighting extradition to the U.S. Now, there's an article that was published, earlier this year. It was a UK magazine that basically lists all of the charges in the UK. And when you read them all, it points it all out. The FBI is charging him with all the Arnie stuff, and it makes sense. It works out. They seized his devices. They found all the TDO stuff. He was the one kind of registering all the accounts. He was literally doing all of the stuff that you could get caught for. And he was a giant douchebag. Isn't that just the best picture? And in his extreme douchiness, he decided to call somebody, a law firm, and record the message and put it on YouTube. Hello?
Hold on, Jim. Let me just...
He raps.
Yo, Jim, I got a message. You can suck my dick. Did they tell you that I've got all of your fucking shit? I got your medflick and your email. I got everything. You want it back then? You've got to give me some fucking ching. Get on your email, mate. Check it out. See what I got. Trust me, bruv. You're going to get one call from me, yeah? Pay it up. Because I've got some funny looking shit on this server, bruv. You understand what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean? Get it done. Or I'm going to cause you some fucking shit, bruv. Best bit of advice for you. Take it, read it, pay it, forget it. We will fuck you up. You won't get us. You won't get away. Have a good day.
So, he really had the whole, anonymity thing covered. So, this picture, I love this picture. The kids, I don't even know if the kid's, alive in this picture. But anyway, so that was Arnie. So, no big mystery there. He was the front guy. And, whatever, they had him do all the stuff that they didn't want to do themselves, which was very smart, actually. All right, so Crook. Just to give you a little spoiler alert, Crook is NSFW, the guy that I showed you earlier with all the other stuff. Now, so Crook was the one posting all of the RDP access, sale stuff. He was on all the forums, whatever else. The reason why his choosing of names is so just brilliant. His other name that he was using at the time was Fetty Wap, who's a rapper. So whenever you search for him, you come up with a bunch of crap. The thing about Crook is there's a few other Carters using the name Crook. Most notably, all roads lead to this man. He also happens to be giant. Well, he's obviously a giant pothead, but he's a Carter. It's very obvious. He's very open about it, actually. He uses the name Crook. And so a lot of the security reports will all talk about this man in Saskatchewan who's really crook. Yeah, that's him. It's not him. I mean, yes, I take that back. He is crook. He's just not TDO's crook. So the great thing about looking for these guys, like when you start to find them, just like with anyone in the industry, I mean, they all reuse their passwords. It's so dumb. If you have the right data sets, you can start to look for passwords. In his case, his password was 786110. I don't know why that's burned in my head, but it is. And so that's a fairly unique password. It had something to do with Islam. I don't remember what it was, but so you start to look up other people with passwords 786110, and you find other accounts that are associated, and you kind of move down the chain. The problem is, actually, and this is when I was working with Krebs at the time, Krebs made this beautiful little map of all the different accounts we found, where we found them, what was going on. The issue was, none of it, as great as it was, would ever link back to this Swiss Jabber account. And the Swiss Jabber account was TDO's crook. So there was a gap. And, eventually we figured out that obviously it wasn't the right guy. But so I was stuck on this part for a long time. And I was trying to find the answer in a lot of different threat intel tools. I've literally tried them all. None of them have what I needed, so I just built my own. Call it Data Viper. It's not commercially available. Maybe it will be one day, but basically what I did was I needed historical data, I needed data dumps, I needed forums, I needed everything. So I had access to all these, private data sets from the guys who were literally dumping them. So that was easy. And I mean, I tried Recorded Future, I tried Intel 471, 4IQ, SpyCloud. None of them had all of the pieces necessary. And actually, I got to be honest, some of them were really rude. Like when I asked them for help, one of them actually literally told me to fuck off. And I had friends who had access to their system who would run the queries for me. And it occurred to me that the reason they were so rude about it is because their product fucking sucked. I mean, they had no data to begin with, and I just don't think they wanted to show that off. So anyway, I started building all these different scrapers to run across forums, and I have these terabytes of data now. And so I've got this all in this Elasticsearch database, which is protected by a firewall. And it's been great. So the cool thing is, so this is Data Viper. The cool thing is it allows me I can do all these sorting. I can kind of run all these queries the way I want. But the important thing is I can see all of the person's posts in a row, right? And so when you start to kind of break it down by time, there's a much clearer picture that's put together. All right. And I'll show you what I found. So March 29, 2016, Crook posts on Kickass Forum that he's selling Carding Mafia, Army Force Online, Team Skeet, which is this big porn network, which I'm sure none of you know anything about, and some other stuff. Again, crooked Swiss Jabber. Fine. A couple days later, Team Skeet goes up for sale on Dream Market by someone named NeoBoss. Literally one day later, there's an article published on I don't know, somewhere, where hackers selling data under the handle NeoBoss has gained control of the site Team Skeet. Fine. You could make an assumption that this is Crook until you see this post where he's clearly pissed that his partner went to the press and took credit for it. So we know that it wasn't Crook, that whoever he was working with got the data, went to the press, claimed it, and now it's public. About a month later, there's a Ripper report filed on Exploit from Crook to someone named Worm. Worm is a very, very well-known scammer. Interestingly enough, he filed the same Ripper report on a forum called Siphon under the name FattyWop, so that was an instant connection. Then, October, this article comes out. Hacker linked to MySpace LinkedIn dumps hacks competitor. Peace, who made his name selling database dumps of Silicon Valley's, has dumped apparent data of rival black market site. Okay. This is why I love when they fight. So not only did he hack the site, but he dumped the database. So analyzing the database, popping it into Data Viper, we see this little insert statement. Now, so I have all these scripts running in Data Viper that will just pull out these SQL statements and kind of whatever, put it into a format that I can search. In this forum announcement, which technically isn't a forum post, it's just an announcement, so easy to miss, but Worm is under new management. Payment and info sent to KE7HB at worm.ws. Doesn't mean anything, right? Just Worm is under new management. Fine. Data Viper for the win. If we look at the insert statements, we can see that username KE7HB has now been changed to crook at swissjabber.ch. So going back to our previous article where Peace of Mind literally went to the press and said he hacked Worm's site, you can see right here that Peace of Mind is crook at SwissJabber. And now that I kind of figured that out, going back over the logs and looking back to May of 2016 in Vanity over OPSEC, he fucking posted it. He said, Worm is under new management. I wonder who it could be. Jeez. So that mystery was solved. So now we know who Crook is. Crook is this guy, Peace of Mind. Now, Peace of Mind was really well known for LinkedIn, MySpace, VK.com. There's so many. I don't think he hacked them. I think he was just more of a broker. But Peace of Mind is also well known as Ping, the owner of the original Hell Forum. And there was so much news about him in 2016 when the forums were raided. And they had this whole fake docs that they tried to pass over on the police and hoping that they would believe that he wasn't some 15-year-old, even though he is. So here's some other aliases. Frosty, he's also NSFW, Orion, C86X, which he uses as TDO, and many, many, many more, which will be in my official report, which will be out any day now. Just waiting for those arrests to happen. So, so they raided his place. They found a forum called PingSec. That was a pretty obvious clue that he was the real Ping. But obviously he was a minor at the time, so that kind of got thrown out. But kind of based on all this, we know exactly who he is now. And the really important thing, sorry about that, is that now that I know who he is, it's just an open day to identifying the rest of TDO, because all you got to do now is figure out, okay, who is this kid associated with? Who was he friends with on Hell Forum? How did he meet? Because he didn't just randomly meet other members of TDO, right? I mean, these are his boys. And it turns out the other member of TDO, who unfortunately we're not going to talk about today, they live 5 miles from each other. They're a year apart in age. I mean, couldn't get any easier. So he was also admin of The Real Deal, Dark Web Market, NSFW, and Gnostic players. They're all over the news now. Gnostic players. This is all the stuff that they've openly admitted to doing. They are very busy. So any of the data dumps that are floating around now is probably coming from him. Now, he's not the driving force in Gnostic players. There's a few guys, but I know he's helping. So, I mean, you take all this stuff, MyFitnessPal, MyHeritage, there's so much here, Chegg, Armor Games, 8-Tracks, and you combine that with all of his other stuff. I mean, I don't know how he does anything else. But actually, he does have a day job that's not in IT. But so, look at known associates, right? And so once I started, sorry, I'm going to go real fast because we're running out of time. So once I figured out who his associates were, that led me right to NSA at Rose.io, who's TDO2, who's the current figurehead, the really aggressive douchebag of the Dark Overlord. And Cyper. And Cyper I want to talk about. Cyper is kind of the man in the background. So Cyper is, I'd say, mid-40s. Excellent programmer. I think his background's C++. Also, he goes by NSA. Him and NSA kind of swapped aliases at one point. Also goes by Cybertron, Look, Ghost, Xenon. He was the admin of Kickass Forum and also the admin of Black Box Forum. And he was in an old hacking group in the 90s, also a good giveaway of his age, called Hackwiser. I know this to be true because he won't shut up about it. You can track his aliases on different forums because that's the first thing he says. I was member of Hackwiser, and it's not even right English. So, as part of all the data I was collecting for Data Viper, there was an old forum called Galaxy 2, and it's basically like a tour-based social media. And I guess this is a place that people just go and like troll each other. And so there was a heated flame war on Galaxy 2, and I'm not going to read all this, but Cybertron, which is Cyper, and this guy Arsyntex are always going back and forth about how Cyper wants to start this forum called Black Box. No, Black Box is a stupid name. No, you're a skid, blah, blah, blah. It's all very riveting. But then there's this, and this is just great. So Sugar Time. Rule of hidden services. Never speak your real IP. Telnet. Cyper. Okay, so Black Box URL literally had the name Cyper in it, which also is a giveaway. Oh, and look at that. ks355296.kimsufi.com. Oh, and is that his IP address for the Black Box server? I think it is. 91.121.120.49. It just happened to be open. Somebody caught it and posted it. So that's why I love the power of historical data, because it's all there. If you can go back far enough, you'll find where these kids are just being assholes and they just out each other, and it's all right there. And so I'm going to... One more thing before I leave you. Going back to this Hackwiser thing. I love this. So Cyper, all he talks about is being in Hackwiser. It's like his, I don't know, it's his Grammy, whatever you want to call it. On Galaxy 2, he posted this message. Here's something for you to read. Here's the Hackwiser article. And then Arsyntex lists the members, which includes Cybertron, blah, 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 and he's laughing. Okay. Now, when I read this, it took me a few minutes, but then I thought about it. I've seen the Hackwiser page so many times, and not once did I ever remember seeing Cybertron. And so here's the current Hackwiser page, right? It lists all these members, the historical members. Doesn't say Cyper anywhere on it. And this is when I found out how amazing Wikipedia actually is. So Wikipedia keeps records of every edit ever made ever. And in this just beautiful move, Cyper needed to immortalize himself. And so over here on the left, we see the original member list. And over here on the right, we see the addition of Cybertron. Now, if you're going to post something anonymously on Wikipedia, you probably don't want to do it from VPN or Tor address, because it'll probably get flagged. So where are you going to do it from? Home IP address? Yeah. So, doing a quick trace, came back to Austria, which I already knew he was in. So, I mean, this guy is so stupid that he had to put his own name in Wikipedia, use his own IP address, and it's just right there. So, that's the kind of stuff I love doing, like this type of investigative work. It's very different from a lot of the threat intel that's being done. And, one of the reasons I decided to not publish my tool is because I think it is such a specific thing that I don't know how many people would actually get good use out of it unless you're a SOC that's really looking for that kind of stuff. So for now, it's just kind of my thing. But that's kind of where I'm at. So we covered Cyper, we covered Crook, which were the two of the three main, and we covered Arnie. So we covered 3 of the 4 main members of TDO. The last one I actually can't talk about yet. But very, very soon, hopefully. I would like to say at the next Derbycon, but at the next somewhere. So with that, we're right on time. Thanks for coming.